Continuing on. Um, so, as I was saying, we get a more fleshed out idea of what Apocalypse wants, but we don't really get a good idea of what Baron Zemo the or Ultron has, because Apocalypse is very much like Ultron, sees himself as a holy figure whose purpose is to cleanse the world for the better, and it'll end up survival of the fittest. Except Apocalypse just thinks that the fittest, he's going to deem who the fittest are. And it's going to be mutants, obviously. Whereas Ultron has a very vague idea of how it's going to turn out. He's like, oh, people will fight and strive to be better, and after I drop a huge rock on the world. Um, but they both have a similar idea of like remold the world, and but Apocalypse is more of a leader. He sees himself leading after the fact, whereas Ultron's like just a tool of change. But Zemo, in Civil War, isn't very clear about his motivations. Like he's puppeteering the entirety of what the characters are going through. One, that's a horrible thing to add to Civil War. If you've ever read the Civil War comic, it didn't need it. It doesn't need a bad guy. But because it's Hollywood convention and I don't know, Disney or Marvel or whatever, the movie franchise conventions, that there has to be a bad guy to lay all the blame on. What would have been more interesting if they didn't have a bad guy, where it was an ideological battle, a debate that ended up with fists flying because they didn't want to give up their freedoms. That would have been interesting. That's what made me interested in the comic. Here's the thing: this year, this year alone, there have been adaptations of my first ever comics and my favorite comic. Civil War is probably my favorite comic, one of. And the first two comics that I got given by my brothers. One, my brother Tony got me into Age of Apocalypse in roughly the mid-90s, and my brother Michael gave me The Dark Knight Returns, the Frank Miller graphic novel. This was my start, that and watching the Batman animated series and the X-Men animated series, so I had an idea of Apocalypse from that. And that's the thing. Apocalypse doesn't have to be too deep. He just needs to be this unstoppable, uncontrollable force that sees himself as, of course, I'm going to rule. I'm not just most qualified, but I'm a god. Like, I'm so powerful that I'm a god, right? He's a cult leader. He's insane. Zemo, though, is meant to have some kind of motivation, but it's never really clearly explained what that motivation is. It's like, I get to tear the Avengers apart, because of Sokovia and all these, like, because he has some grudge against his family being killed. I can't even remember. A lot of people I ask, whoa, a lot of people I ask, whoa, what was his motivation in the movie? Can't remember. And it's the main bad guy, right? The point is, it doesn't matter. You cut him from the film is better for it if he's not there. And people are like, well, then things wouldn't have happened in the film. I'm like, yes, they would have. It just wouldn't have had some puppeteer manipulating it. It just would have been the fact that Captain America and Iron Man are having an ideological debate with their fists and the shield, and you know and here's the thing: Civil War starts off really good. it starts off really good. It has great, you know, great philosophical debates about the nature of control versus the nature of liberty. Um, what is liberty? What is freedom? You know, what is fear? These themes that have been running through the films, and they show another side of their battles. The battle in New York, the battle in I think it's all these different battles that have caused mass destruction to cities, and they're addressing it. Ironically, if you'll notice that they don't include the destruction from the Incredible Hulk. They don't include it, and largely because it's the general's fault that happened, unleashing the abomination. Um, so yeah, that's interesting. That's interesting. Um, because it undermines their argument, really, that the government or the military should have some sort of control over powered individuals. It just shows that it goes wrong. It goes wrong. Um, but they sign the accord, and Captain America gets a bunch of his friends, and other people join Iron Man, and I mean, they should have just had that. He should have just been a fugitive, um, a vigilante. It didn't need Zemo at all, and yeah, it's the additions and the changes they did to the comic that are really the things that annoyed me. And the problem is, they Spider-Man gives reference to Empire Strikes Back in the movie, and I'm like, ooh, does are they gonna Empire Strikes Back this movie? Is it gonna be the dark movie where it doesn't have everybody succeed? It kind of does. I mean, the Avengers are kind of broken up a bit, but they don't really do an Empire Strikes Back, which is a shame. Um, because I was fully prepared for it, and they didn't. I was like, give me a dark ending where, give me an ending like the end of Civil War, where Captain America, if you haven't read Civil War, go out and read it. And, stop this video now and go out and read it. But um, the ending of Civil War, Captain America looks around and he realizes that he's not fighting for anything anymore. He's just fighting. Um, and that should have been the ending. Not exactly the same, but he should have been pummeling. He should have felt something when he was pummeling Iron Man half to death. After, this didn't feel like the Captain America I know and love. The one that I, like, got behind in the other movies. I went in Team Cap and I left Team Iron Man. It screwed with my head because this is not what Civil War is about. Civil War is about this ideological battle where Captain America has an epiphany that you can be you can be right, like you can be have a right to be upset and a right to feel like you're justified in your actions, but your actual actions are destructive and just completely based on rage and selfish. Um, and it's like Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier, sure, he was out of his mind, but he should have stand trial for what has been done. He should. It's not like the insanity plea is out of question, and the Marvel universe now has like people who have been affected by mind control, if you watch Jessica Jones. So it's totally plausible. He could say I mind control and get a lighter sentence or something. But he's like, no, he's my friend. So I'm going like, what the fuck does that even mean? Like the comics weren't even about that. The comics had this young superhero team that fucked up and caused collateral damage. It was a movie about collateral. It was a comic about collateral damage, and that's what the movie started out with. And then it ended with, "No, might is right, and we can't have Iron Man win, and we can't have Captain America win, because that would mean one of them loses. So we make them both win. Have one of them lose. Grow some balls. Seriously, have one of them lose. Have Captain America surrender. The best thing in the comic. He surrenders when he was winning, because he realized what he was doing was wrong. It's amazing. You need to pick up the comic if you haven't read it. Um, what's something that they both do that X-Men Apocalypse and Civil War both do, which is set up other films. Um, in Civil War, it kind of feels obnoxious with the Spider-Man stuff. It feels like this is Spider-Man Origins, setting up for the Spider-Man movie that you're gonna buy. And X-Men has this is the apology for Wolverine Origins, setting up for the tone of what the Wolverine movie will be, the R-rated one, you know. At least the setup in the Wolverine stuff in X-Men Apocalypse is part of the film. Whereas it feels a bit contrived how they bring in Spider-Man. Feels a tiny bit contrived. Like, we got the rights to this character, let's just slot him in. That said, he's awesome in the movie, and I so want to see that Spider-Man movie. But yeah, it just felt like an addition wherein it doesn't have the the gravity of what Spider-Man did in the Civil War comic. Civil War comic, the biggest thing he does is reveal his identity, and it blows up in his friggin' face. Um, and that's not really a thing in this movie. He just comes in as hi and as bye. So that was a bit disappointing, just a tad. I'm gonna address something in X-Men Apocalypse, going back to that, that a lot of people don't seem to get, which is why Quicksilver doesn't reveal that he's the son of Magneto. It's because, and this is like, were people not paying attention to the movie? He says to his mom, like, "Is my dad a bad guy?" And he doesn't want to believe that his dad is a bad guy. Like, he's heard stories about how bad he was, and he's met him in Days of Future Past. But he doesn't really know him, and he's heard all these horrible stories about him, and now his dad is trying to destroy the world, and he's there, and he has the opportunity to use that leverage, and it would have been kind of, the cliche, the oh, he's going to use that as leverage to stop his dad from that and that, but he doesn't, and I think the reason why he doesn't is because of that scene where he asks his mum, "Is my dad a bad guy?" Because he wants to see that he's not a bad guy based solely on the fact that he doesn't do bad things. Not because, oh, his son's there, therefore he's going to stop doing bad things. He wants to see him do good on his own bat. I'll continue later.